All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. Let me know how the audio sounds, and we'll get right into the live stream. So once I get that audio checked, just drop something in the comments. If you're new to the live stream, guys, then obviously let's try to keep our picks, the charts you want me to look at, down to one or two, just so I have an opportunity to get through everyone. And this live stream is really meant to go through various charts that you guys are looking at, things that you think are interesting. Oftentimes, as a group, we'll find some trade ideas out of these live streams that we can make a play on for the next week. So we'll see how that pans out, and we'll get right into it. All right, audio is good. So typically, what I'll do is start out with broad market analysis just for a little bit, and then just to see how we close the week out, and then we'll get into these individual charts. So, all right, so triple Qs. For me, that's the most important, just because it's the heaviest weighted, I mean, in the S&P 500, it is, and again, all over the media, everybody knows that basically it's 7 or 8 stocks that have pretty much contributed to most of the gains in the S&P 500. It's just due to the market cap weighting. So if someone's buying Apple, Apple's indexed in the S&P, in the SPY, and it's indexed in a lot of different various indexes. If you're buying Apple and you're putting money into, one stock, they have to balance those indices out. And so they'll buy other things too. And it just kind of lifts the general indices. And then also just the weighting. If Apple's heavily weighted and you're buying Apple, it causes the indices to rally. So that's what's been going on. Market rally on relatively thin breadth. We did see some widening of that breadth in the last couple weeks. I wouldn't say last week, we didn't see that because there was obviously selling, but we did see some widening of that breadth. People are buying some other stocks besides the FANGs, but for the most part, it's still been those FANG stocks. So on triple Qs, we hit resistance right there at 371.70 on whenever that day was, and that's the next level of resistance. All right, so as we reach these levels of resistance on this daily chart, we should expect pullbacks, and that's really been my thesis for the last week was, okay, we're going to hit resistance. We still have the negative divergence on the daily chart, and it tells me that we're likely going to get at a minimum a pullback to the major trend line. This is your bull market. I wouldn't say bull market, but this is your rally. All right, this is the rally that we've seen this year, starting back in January on the daily chart in triple Qs, and I'm looking for a pullback to the trend line. All right, what is going on? This is the weirdest thing. All of a sudden I have a brush highlighter. I have to fix that real quick. It's strange how you leave these things and then you come back. I left it on Friday. I come back. It's completely different. I didn't change anything. I don't know. Very strange. That's probably close enough. All right. So that is where we are at, and what I'm looking for is that continued pullback in the markets. In the private member group, I talked about how the rally on, this is the hourly chart, the rally on Friday, I looked like a good opportunity to short. I pointed that out. I said, guys, this is where I'm would be reestablishing shorts if you got out for a little bounce, or if you're not short, it looks like a good short opportunity. Obviously, I get a lot of trolls that really all they want to do is make fun of me as a person, and honestly, since I've been doing this channel, they show up, they hang out for a little while, and then they leave eventually. So especially when you have divergences building, and this is how it goes. These divergences typically will build for a while, and the market will continue to rally, and I keep pointing out, looking for a major reversal. But it can take some time, Sometimes that's a couple months, Sometimes it's a couple weeks. So I get a lot of people in that period of time. And then usually when the market does roll over, like the divergences tell me they're going to, those people just disappear. And the new ones show up next time the market starts to rally. But there's the bounce there, and then gap down. Little rally, they tried to, but they sold into it. All right, so that's what I'm taking from that is, they did sell into that. Guys, I need a brighter green here. I do not know why my colors got messed up. I'll have to fix that after the live stream's over. So they sold into that rally on triple Qs, and I'm looking for continued downside. There's some support right here. You can see on this hourly chart right there, 357.50 or 60 or whatever, somewhere right in there. So I suspect we run down there now, boom, and probably get a bounce there. And then maybe you don't have to get a bounce. I still think there's probably more downside. I really wouldn't be looking for any kind of a major bounce till you get down to the major trend line, which is down there. Which could fall, maybe we bounce and then roll. And then ultimately, I think we're going to come down to this trend line, and it'll probably fall in line about 346.50 is really where I would expect a major bounce to take place. And again, going back to the daily chart, that is just, that is just going back to this major trend line. Right there. Sorry, guys. I'm just noticing some really weird things on my trading view. I don't know why it's doing it. I'm not able to show the multiple time frames right here. So I don't know. There's some glitchy things going on. So that's where I'm looking for the major bounce. There's also a gap to fill. I don't think we're going to go fill that gap before we get a major bounce at that trend line. The dip buyers and the trend followers, the major trend followers, they're going to be following this trend right here. All right, and that's it on the hourly. So down there at 346. That's really all I have on that one. So if we're going to, I'm shorting right now, looking for, looking to cover down there. What else do we got? That's triple Qs. I mean, the SPY, which I don't trade typically because there's a lot of defensive stocks and stuff. Let me get over to the daily here. Yeah, see, trading view it's having a tough time. It's not catching up and stuff. I don't know what's going on with these guys today. The SPY, this is going back to October of 2022. That's not really a valid trend line that I can mark out. You have this downtrend line. This was the bear market trend line that was in place, started to break out. So, you could pull back to that trend line. I don't know. Here's starting this in March, kind of mark that out. I think we got something like that right there as the upward trend line to watch on the SPY. So again, looks like it's pulling back to the trend line. Triple Qs is really the chart for me. And then if you also see like IWM, this is your small caps. Small caps, selling off. Still coming down to the 200, so we'll see if there are buyers there at the 200, if they're going to hold that, or if it fails. It's failed several times before. Not really, you can see on the 200 right there, rejected, but you've chopped through it a couple times, so it's not a super valid indicator on this chart to tell me, that you're going to have support or not. So that is that on that one. All right, I'm going to get into the charts and we'll just start at the top. All right, we've got XBI. That's our home builders. That one, oh no, that's Biotech. The home builders to me looks like a really good short. It's just not, there's no trigger there yet. So I got to just wait on it. On this one, XBI, let's see here. You've got, potential downtrend line. The thing is, you don't have a lot of reactions like there. I don't have enough reactions to validate that as a trend line. I can mark it here, which is probably the best I could do, but that still only gives me the top. You got one there. You've got some back tests as support. You have, if I roll into the kind of the near time frame, you've got some divergence starting to show up on the daily. So, all right, so that's a divergent high, and it's getting sold into. All right, look for those divergent highs, those divergent lows. They typically, if it's a divergent high, it's typically going to get sold into, but it's not active. I don't just trade a divergent high just because it's a divergent high. You really want to look for a sell signal Something like that on the daily chart you see here. All right, let me just kind of, you've got a reaction there, you've got a reaction there, you got a cluster right there. You've got, look, see where it closed on Thursday, closed right on that trend line, and Friday gapped down and sold off. That's a sell signal right there, okay? Now, if you have a sell signal, it doesn't mean load the boat, because they could backtest. And if you can't ride out a backtest, you're too heavy in the position. That's kind of how that works, if they bounce it and do some sort of a backtest and you can't ride out that little move because you're still on a sell signal, which means you should be shorting into the rip, or taking a position if you haven't done so. You could short on a backtest. But if you short everything here and you can't ride out that, a back test, which would be about a 4 or 5%, potentially more. You never know exactly where it's going to back test, or even if it's going to do it. That's why you can take the position. You can take a short on a breakdown of the trend line, because you're not guaranteed to get the back test. So what I do is you take a position. If it rallies, if our back test, you can add to it. And then at that point, you really want to let the trade just kind of work out. So I could see us coming down to the trend line here. And then potentially breaking, who knows. What I would do is just short, you cover if you get down here. And then if if it back tests, you could short again. Or if it breaks the trend line support, you could short again. As long as that breakdown doesn't come with bullish divergence. That's XBI. AMD, these semis are starting to roll over, I've noticed, except for NVIDIA. That's the one that hasn't. Here's AMD, and I really wish my trend lines that I had previously drawn would show up. It's really annoying. They'll show up like tomorrow, and I'll have like double lines, on Monday or whatever. So this is the trend line support on the daily. Little breakdown right there, but see, that breakdown, if you zoom in, I look for these kinds of things. This little breakdown right here, see, they were down here at one point in time, breaking down, but it was a divergent low. You had slight bullish divergence right there on the daily, so it would tell you that's likely going to be a false breakdown, and then they gapped it up, and it was a false breakdown. So on that one, I would say we're heading down to this trend line. You just filled the gap right here, so maybe you get a little bounce here. Okay, maybe a little bounce, and just look for, I don't know, probably that area right in there. So you could go like this, and then I think you continue down to the trend line, or it could go sideways and then hit the trend line. Trend line should be support, so you'd want to probably cover a short if you were short, and then if you break that trend line, you could reestablish the short. You got earnings coming up this is a little ways off, August. So, what it's probably going to do is work its way lower down to the trend line into the earnings, and then we'll see. I could easily see it breaking down and continuing lower on the earnings, but it's probably not going to do that before earnings. I would think you probably just come down to this trend line before earnings. All right, CRM, Salesforce, negative divergence, very clean and obvious. All right, very, very obvious divergence. That's the kind of divergence that's really my favorite, because it's just so obvious. You want to look, see, the thing is, on this one, you try to draw a trend line, and that's about as good as I can make one, is right about there. Little bit of disbelief, I guess, right, going on right here in terms of the trend line being broken. What I would wait for at this point is probably to take out those lows. Something like that. You take out the lows. That would be my sell signal area, since this was a sell signal, this breakdown, and then they did a back test, and then it was rejected, and you can see what's going on. They broke, rally, broke, rally, broke. It's choppy. So I just probably wait to take out the lows. You take out the lows, you're probably going to go start to trend lower. Look for this as a, you got a little gap to fill right there. So mark that out. And there's probably a little reaction right in here. Somewhere right in there, it looks like. But again, I think you probably start to trend lower. So take out the lows. I think you're going to head down to the 200. It's a good setup. It's not actionable yet. I mean, it is actionable. If you shorted it, you just maybe have to ride it out. It's kind of looks very similar to MasterCard. You'll see what's going on here with MasterCard. Ay, my lines, all my trend lines. This one has a nice clean trend line here. Very, very nice and clean. Support, 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 support. Broken support, and they've just been back testing. So, back test 1, sold. Back test 2, sold. Hasn't done a third back test. I don't think you're going to get one, but you could. And big negative divergence. So very likely going to start to break down and head down to the 200. And you've got support right down here. Right about there. At 340, 340-ish. So I would suspect we're going to run down, hit the 200, probably get a little bounce at the 200, but ultimately I think you're going to head down to this trend line or this horizontal support line, and then we'll see. Beyond that, I'm not sure. HSI. All right, let's see here. What is this? This is Hang Seng, the Chinese index, Hong Kong. I don't trade these. So I've got a downtrend like that, all right? Tighten that up, and you've got the high, resistance, resistance in a downtrend. There's no indication that that has changed. So that's it. GIS, General Mills. So this is going to be a defensive or consumer staple, basically. Uptrend. This is COVID, or no, it's 2018. This thing's been in an uptrend since 2018. You had negative divergence right there on the daily. See it dropping off, and you're like, tick, 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 higher, higher, higher. For months maybe. But the divergence was building. It finally broke. This one you could have probably just drawn something like that. It broke here. That was your sell signal, and down she goes. So I don't see any indication. That's dropped, 10%. I think you're going to come in and hit that trend line. I mean, you're below the 200. It looks like it's kind of flagging. I think you're going to go check that trend line. Down there is support. So I would be, I would probably be a buyer down there. At least for a reaction, at least for a bounce. I think it's low risk to buy here. You maybe get a bounce, see what the chart looks like after that. Obviously, if you break that trend line, that's bearish. That would be a sell signal. As long as you don't, for the most part, that would be a sell signal. So I think you go like that. You probably bounce, could continue to trend higher. All right. Greetings from Dominican Republic. I always wanted to check that place out. Punta Cana, I think is what it's called. Looks like a pretty cool spot. Tesla. So I'm short this one, guys, currently. And here's what I like about shorting it. Let me check this. I think you got a little trend line right here. All right. You got multiple reactions. I think we're coming down to check that trend line. And on this one, you have to get down to the hourly just to see what I kind of like. But you basically had this kind of parabolic move going on in the market. And, you know, we could probably mark it out like something like that. Okay, there's a parabolic move, and we broke that, all right? And that came with negative divergence on the hourly here. You had a sell signal. And so, again, I think we're going to head down. We've got a gap to fill here. So a very high probability we're going to fill this gap, probably get a little bounce. But ultimately, going back to the daily, I think we're heading down to this trend line, which kind of aligns with probably the triple Qs dropping it down to that trend line as well. Down here, I don't want to, you know, I'll cover my short. I don't want to be short at a major trend line support on the daily chart. Also, which is kind of interesting, if I zoom in, look at that. That's still negative divergence on the daily. You made an equal high in momentum. It's not confirmed because you want to see the PPO crossover to help confirm that. But there is a divergence there on the daily, which means that this high, all this price action, is divergent high on the daily chart. And that would really indicate that we're going to get a major trend change in the near future. So maybe what it does is comes down, hits the trend line. You're probably going to get some dip buyers, but maybe then we break that trend line. And if you see the breakdown, then obviously that's setting us up for another leg lower in a bear market. Okay. All right, that one went through that one. Let's see here. Dish seems to be basing out. Let's check it out. Yeah, it does look to be basing out. Bullish divergence on both momentum indicators. It's down here on the RSI too. Sometimes it's hard for me to draw this line. Let me even that out. You've got bullish divergence on both momentum indicators. You're kind of making divergent lows. So see, divergent low. You're probably going to go make another one. No buy signal. So it's very similar to wheat, you know, and I'll pull that chart up. But I would go with that trend line. You break to the upside of that trend line, and that would be your buy signal. And then can't really make. That's maybe a major trend line. So, all right, so you break this. That's probably your buy signal. And then you've got some lines, you know, some areas of resistance, pretty decent resistance right overhead or right up in here, about $13. No buy signal. All right, so I wouldn't buy it. And that's like the wheat one. I mean, you can see here we talked about it for a while, obviously, and I don't know where my lines went, so I have to redraw them. I think I had this one. This one, the wedge really started to form really about right in here. The wheat futures, it was a cleaner chart. But we had this bullish falling wedge there, and it with big bullish divergence, and we broke out. See, the stuff works. It just doesn't always work. There's no guaranteed. So not all trades are going to work. Sometimes a trade just doesn't work, and it's just not correct. Or sometimes the trade extends longer than you think it's going to. But most of the time, the stuff works. Bullish divergence, bullish falling wedge, bullish breakout. Now, if you guys are in the private member group, I did really hone you in on the pretty much the perfect entry. Here's your wheat futures, and this one, very clean chart here. We had this big bullish falling wedge. I think I had it drawn maybe something like that. And the private member group, I told you guys before, I said, look, it looks like wheat's about to break out. We've got the bullish divergence, but the futures hadn't quite broken out. So I said, look for the futures to break out. and that would be, I mean, that's pretty much all the information you need to take a shot. And then the future started to break out, and I pointed it out on the hourly chart exactly when it started to happen in the private member group. I said, guys, futures are starting to break out. Looks like wheat's about to run. And, from there, it ran up 15% in a matter of, a week. Okay, so it's by the dip on this one. This was your downtrend, and we broke out. So I think you're going to get a pullback here. I think you will. Maybe you don't. But I'd be buying the dip. I think you got support right there. 710. So that's wheat. I'll be covering that more often. It looks like a good chart. All right, let's go back to your guys' pick. CRSR. Corsair Gaming. Okay. So on this one, you've got a trend line. You've got negative divergence. That was building for a while. All right. Look, as divergence started to build here, that's a divergent high. You didn't know that there was negative divergence until it made that high, and it made it on less momentum. All right. And then that got sold into, and then you made a new divergent high. These are all divergent highs here. Okay. You broke. All right. It broke one day. They tried to hold it, but failed. Did a little back test, and it was destroyed. So how far of a drop is that one? 5%. Very obvious sell signal in that big red candle. And this one is continued on a sell signal. So sell the rip. That's how I would treat that. Rallies into resistance are opportunities to add or initiate a short position. So if you get another back test, that's a short. I would not be a buyer here. I would be looking to short. That's it on that one. But I don't want to short right here. I don't want to short this. I want to short right there, or even maybe they're 1840. I don't want to short down here. I want to short rallies into resistance or breaks of support. All right. You also have some support right here. All right, so if it wants to rally, I want to short up there. All right, that's it. Intel. All right, guys, let me see here. Are the comments working? I'm not seeing any new comments. Just want to make sure. I've been having issues this morning. Well, it seems like trading views busted and had memory issues on my computer and just all kinds of stuff. It's weird. So let me know if the comments are working and if everything's working. So on Intel, let's see here, because I am not seeing any new comments show up. So this is a semiconductor. This is the one's been smashed a lot more than the others. I mean, I'd say that's the downtrend that we're really monitoring. Little breaks right there, but close enough. Resistance, resistance, resistance. And you got close. They sold into it. Could rally it into there, but again, when you have a well-defined trend line, the sellers will often step in early. That's why you want to basically take your positions ahead of key levels. You don't want to wait for the exact hit of the level. Usually you want to just get positioned just ahead of key levels or exit trades. Sold into divergence on the daily, negative divergence there, and the RSI there. That's a divergent high into major resistance. I mean, that's a short. Now it's not a short here. You know, it's already dropped. It's already dropped 12, 13% in like 3 days, 4 days. So I don't want to short it here, but you know, you rally back into that trend line, it's a short. You're kind of at some support. There's also decent support right down here. So again, rallies into resistance, you want to short on that one. All right, TNX, well, that's our interest rates. I think those are starting to rise again, and that's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting the 10-year, this is our 10-year interest rate. I'm expecting that to continue to trend higher. Now, if you look at that, let me see how I mark this out. I know I had this marked out, maybe something like about, kind of like this. I don't know, we have to, I don't like that, but could be like that. I don't know. It's kind of choppy right through here. If you go to the weekly, interest rates are, you know, yeah. Right about in there. I mean, that looks good. You've got the COVID lows, a little intra-week dip, but ultimately you closed on that trend line 1 week. The next week, intra-week dip, but recovered it. There's support. And we are basically, see, it's closing right there. So you do have negative divergence on the weekly. So maybe it breaks. Maybe the interest rates break down. That would likely be due to a recession, though, you know, if you have interest rates breaking down. So we'll see. Maybe what happens is we get another spike high in interest rates. Then we see the market starting to really roll over. And then the interest rates break down as the Fed basically starts cutting. That's a possibility. I still see an upward trend line that has not been broken in the interest rates on the weekly chart. And then obviously the bigger picture, this is really the more major thing. This goes all the way back to 1981. And you can, this is, I've been talking about this for years basically, but the fact that a lot of financial planners will tell you time in the market beats timing the market. Okay, and that's I would say that's relatively true in a falling interest rate environment, which is what's been the case since 1981. Okay, every single time you interest rates have been dropping for 50 years, guys. I mean, that's just almost 50 years. You have that's going to be a rising stock market and a rising real estate market for the last 50 years over, you know, in general. I mean, you're going to have recessions along the way, but every single time there was a recession, the Fed cut rates, and that's stimulative to interest rate sensitive assets like real estate in the market. But look, I mean, we're in a new era. All right. So anybody alive today, pretty much for their entire investing lifetime, millennials, baby boomers, you know, I mean, I know my dad is a baby boomer, but, you know, they were in their 20s and stuff back in the 80s, you know, or maybe their early 30s. So they just started to invest probably with, pensions, 401ks, things like that. And their entire investment lifetime, they've had falling interest rates. So that has been a tailwind for them. And so that changes their perspective on the market. You know, that's why they say, oh, time in the market. So always, just as a word of advice, whenever you're talking to a financial planner and they tell you, oh, time in the market is, you know, on average, the market returns this and that, consider the parameters of time that they're using to run their, you know, to tell you that markets return this much. If you be very suspicious if they're like, well, since 1981 or since 1980s or since the 1990s, look at the time frame they're really trying to frame that in, because you need to take that with a grain of salt and say, well, yeah, but we've had falling interest rates since the 80s. And that's a fallacy. The fact that just because interest rates have, or just because the market's been rising in general for the last 50 years, that's because interest rates have been dropping. And this is what we got going on now. So I think we're in a rising interest rate environment. All right. We could back test, we could come and do a back test, but again, rising interest rates. That's a little fundamental stuff going on, but also it meshes with the technicals. Okay. That is a broken trend line. All right. Where am I? Don't want to get too far in a diatribe. AEM. Yeah, I don't see much there, guys, on this gold miner. Let's see here. Yeah, it's kind of at support. Let me... Don't think I can... Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm on the weekly chart. Let me get off of this. It might recover. Right now I've got this trend line, which I don't even like because I've only got a couple reactions, but we'll mark it out. We got low reaction, and then you've kind of got that. Could even maybe move it up to about there to capture a third one. To me, it looks like that trend line has been broken. You do have... Yeah, I don't know. I don't like it. I'm not going to be I'm not shorting it, but I'm also not buying it. I'm just kind of neutral on I'm neutral on a lot of these miners right now. GDX is the mining sector. That, I'd say there's your support. That's pretty clean. It did break that support. It is breaking down with bullish divergence right here. It's not confirmed though, so until you recover the trend line, I don't like it. All right, that's what I have. VSCO and Lennar. Lennar is probably interesting. Let me see this VSCO. Did I get that right? I just see a downtrend here. Well, you do have some bullish divergence, not confirmed. Let me double check on that. There is some bullish divergence on the daily. You can see the RSI is starting to move higher, and we're making a new low. That's not a buy signal, though. So you probably... I mean, these things can go bankrupt, too. This is a Victoria's Secret, probably not going bankrupt. Not as long as there's men and women in the world. This one, I have to get down to the hourly. So I'd probably just use that as your trend line. And it does look to me like so you got bullish divergence. It's just not confirmed, so I don't like it yet. I mean, this is a divergent low, but you need to see the PPO start to turn up on the hourly chart. So once you have that, that would tell me, okay, start to look for a breakout. And then on the daily, I would look for a break of this trend line here to be my buy signal. So until you see that, I just wouldn't be interested in it. So that's that one. And then Lennar's the home builders, which I like as short setups. They, but not actionable. I think that's kind of a trend line, but I don't know. This I only have 2 data points, so I think there's better home builders to short, to be honest. I don't know about this one, to be honest. You have negative divergence. You want to, it's not confirmed. It's extended but not confirmed. So you want to make sure that the PPO starts to turn down and cross over for confirmation. And then again, align your trade with the sector, which is what is it, guys? I forget what the sector is. I'll have to. I don't know what's going on. Watch list. Interesting. I must be signed into a different account on my thing. XHB, is that it? Yeah. On this one, so there's your negative divergence on the PPO. Not confirmed, but it looks like it's starting to. See this? So watch this. First on the PPO, we want to see it cross. That confirms the negative divergence. Next, you want to see a break of trendline support for the sell signal. For me, this is the trend line I'd be following. Okay, so what you want to do is you've got this bearish rising wedge here on XHB. You've got negative divergence. You confirm it, and then you're probably gonna. It might take a while, but head down here, maybe bounce. Ultimately, I'd be looking for a break of the trend line. But when does it happen? It's objective to short up here because you're at resistance. So look, resistance. You definitely that's a reaction. Multiple days where it's just stuck at resistance. So it's objective to short up in this area for a move down to the support. From there, I'd probably cover and then wait for a break of the trend line because you could bounce again and So that's an objective short. You're not quite at the trend line, but again, maybe a 5, 6, 7% drop depending on how quickly it gets down there. But this is telling me it's setting up for a more major trend trade to the downside if or when it breaks this bearish rising wedge. All right, so I like that one. And then some of the other home builders look interesting as well. All right, what else do we have? I'm about finished for today. I'll go through a few more, and then we'll wrap up. Let me just scan your guys' comments. Meta, rising wedge. Yes. Meta has a rising wedge. That's correct. I'm sure I have to redraw it. I'm probably just logged into my different account, guys, so I just have to. I was having issues with computer stuff this morning. There's your rising wedge. I don't know, something like that. Pretty much at the apex. You could see it on Friday. I was watching this, and that's why I pointed out to the private member group to watch Meta for impulsive selling. We didn't get it, and that's okay. But I continue to watch it for impulsive selling. Maybe a big gap down. You'll see it when it shows up. If you get a gap down, that's probably going to be it. They could gap it down. Dip buyers will probably step in. Maybe you rally, but it would be sell the rip at that point. So if it gaps down, you could take a short and add to it on any kind of rallies. But this looks like a good trade setup to me. One of the best, really. Apple looks pretty decent too. Apple and Meta look like the two best charts for short setups. And this one doesn't have a large impact on the market. Apple does. So if Apple has a big short setup, I have decent confidence the triple Qs is, going to have a good short trade as well. You got gaps to fill, so watch for these gaps to be, support or reactions, I guess. Negative divergence has been building on this one. Let me double check. See, it's kind of confirmed. You're kind of crossing down. Really mature bearish rising wedge. I mean, you can go a little bit more. I mean, that's what they've been doing. Let me kind of tighten this up. You can see on Friday, and it was like the algos. You could just see it, but they ran down to the trend line, and then instantly on the 1 minute candle, like buy. and it was like, just rallying off of that. So I didn't want to short it until I see the breakdown, but I think it's coming soon, but I need to see it. Good short setup here. All right, I'm going to do 2 more, and then I'm going to wrap up. So, VIX, I'm not interested in the VIX right now. You could take a shot at it, but I'm just not interested in any kind of VIX plays right now. I know the VIX, there's been talk about the VIX not working as efficiently as it used to because of the 0-day options expirations that they have now. I don't know. Usually when I see an opportunity for a big trend trade and the market doesn't recognize it yet, then you can make a kind of sprinkle a little on the VIX for a spike, just to take some profit on that initial spike. I don't see that right now, so yeah, I don't know why someone asked why they think AMD's gone down and Nvidia hasn't. Well, Nvidia's the mania stock, right? You've got just dumb money chasing this thing. So, that's I think honestly, this could be an island cluster top. All right, maybe we come back down, chop around a little more, then ultimately gap down and create an island cluster top. That should be very powerful for a trend trade to the downside if you see that island cluster top. But we need to gap down to create the island cluster. We don't have that yet. You've got negative divergence now on the daily. So, yeah, I think you're going to get that start to roll over, but we don't have it yet. So, and then let's see AVGO. I know that was another one. NVIDIA rallied and all the semis had major, they just chased many of them. I don't like that. This one pretty much went parabolic. Luckily, I was short this one, but luckily I got out of it when I saw the other NVIDIA basically going nuts. I just got out of these, and so maybe there's another opportunity to short these things, but I don't see enough to short this one quite yet. If we look at the ETF, yeah, I mean, this is a divergent high on the RSI, not so much on the PPO. I really have to use that as my trend line at this point. I think you get a pullback to the trend line consistent with the triple Qs. All right, one more, guys. Drop me a thumbs up if you haven't done so. I do appreciate that. Helps the channel. And then we're going to do one more and wrap up. So let me just go ahead and see what we got going on. One thing I wanted to look at, I haven't looked at it for a while. Yeah, it's right about, it's really right about here. This is a major trend line on the S&P 500, on the SPY basically. And I've had this trend line marked out for years basically, but you've got, this is 2009 on a weekly chart. Support. The reason why I like this as a trend line is because this was a pretty clean, consistent bull market trend line that was broken back in 2018. Okay, the trend line was broken, and this right down here, this is where the Fed stepped in on Christmas Eve, I believe, in 2019. Right in there, they stepped in and said, and they did their reversal. They were raising interest rates starting to, and they reversed and started cutting. Okay, so there was the central banks took action down here. So that tells me it's this breakdown was a relevant breakdown. Then the market rallied based on Fed pumping. And right up in here, this is where COVID mattered, okay? When we hit that trend line, all of a sudden COVID mattered. COVID was a thing well before that. The market started to catch a hint. You know, in China and stuff, it was already kind of a major thing. But we didn't care until we were at major trendline resistance. And then boom, COVID. Now we rallied. This is where the Fed went crazy with their money printing. We were able to recover the trend line, but we did so, and we have inflation as a problem. And that trend line's now been broken, and the Fed has been raising interest rates. So to me, this is a bull market. This was going to be a bear market, but the Fed stopped it. Same with here. The Fed kind of recovered it. And now we've got I think we've got a real bear market where the Fed's not going to step in and help out. Not with inflation where it's at. So to me, that's why I continue to think that we're in a bear market and we're going to make the next leg lower, and we're actually going to take out these lows and, you know, make another leg lower. But we'll see, you know. So that's that one. Anybody else have anything else you want me to look at? I could do one more. Otherwise, I'll just go ahead and wrap up. Go grab some breakfast. I don't really see anything, guys. So, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up. So hopefully you guys had, you know, found some value out of this. And you know, if you're new, feel free to join up in the private member group. Once again, guys, I'm not gonna get every trade right. So I know a lot of the comments on the public videos I put out. You know, you get a lot of the same trolls that are just, you know, they almost like find joy in, you know, wanting to, you know, make fun of me. Basically, the way I attribute it to is if you get a trade wrong, they kick you when you're down. And if you get a trade right, you won't even hear from them. That's the nature of kind of how these people are. So, you know, we got the wheat trade right. That's up 15% in 4 days. I don't hear anybody talking about that. They kind of cherry pick. They like to cherry pick the trades that, you know, that I get wrong and then just only focus on that. So welcome to the world of YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Hopefully you find value, guys. I will catch you on Monday. All right, take care.